What makes the Flood so dangerous? Their numbers? Their offensive capabilities? Their strategic thinking power? No. What really makes the Flood such a formidable foe is going to be its cells. At this point, 60 videos in, it should be pretty much burned into your memory permanently. If you are new here, I will cover lore, morphology, biology, sometimes game reviews, and maybe sprinkle in some controversial subject that leads to a ton of downvotes. You know, that's always fun. And I also do live streams as of very recently, and I'm enjoying them, so they're gonna keep going. You should actually check out those live streams as, well, to me they're fun, but it seems like whoever keeps showing up also has a good time. So if those things sound like a channel worth investing in, then go ahead and hit that sub button. If you aren't new here then you're probably tired of me asking for subs, so that's why I attempt to keep this kind of short. Alright, so let's get to those sweet, sweet cells. As most of you are probably aware at this point, the Flood is extremely efficient in their method of converting biomass of creatures into